Hello everyone and welcome to Tech with Robert, the Get Started with T-SQL course. In this lecture we're going to continue talking about joins, or we're going to talk briefly about the full outer join or the full join, which is it's a type of join that I don't particularly use a lot. I'm going to be honest and say that I don't use it a lot, but there are some scenarios where this kind of join is very beneficial and you sort of have to do this join. So if we go back and look at the inner join that we discussed in the previous lectures, we have seen here that we have table 1 and then table 2, and this yellow or orange part here where it says inner join, it symbolizes the fact that it takes everything from table 1 and table 2, but it's only taking, when there's a match in both tables. So if I have, let's say, 4 different customer IDs in this table and I do a left join to this table, I will only get all of these 4 customers if those 4 customers exist in table 1. But what if, let's say we're looking at a full outer join, and you see here, the whole shape here, both these tables are green here. So in the previous picture we had this part here was to symbolize the fact that we get everything from table 1 and table 2 where there's a match. But when we do a full outer join, we simply get everything from table 1 and table 2, whether there's a match or not. And so let's say that we want to produce a query where we want to say the customer ID, the name, and then the customer ID again, just to show, it's kind of what I mean from the other table, and then the order ID and the sales amount. And so we're still going to use the same join condition. We're going to join on the customer ID from both fields, but if there are customers in table 1 that does not occur in table 2, meaning we have customers who haven't produced any orders, we will still get them, but all of the values that appear in the sales table, table 2, will just display with a null, but we will still take them in the query because we're doing a full outer join. And the reverse is also true here. So if we have customers in the table 2 here, which we don't find a match on in table 1, we will also get these customers as well, but we will not have any data, any descriptive data from table 1 to associate with it, so it's still going to show null values again. And so the same is true for both of these scenarios. And so if we take a look here in this example, we see here that we have table customer and we have customer ID 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 customers here, right? Robert, Mike, James, and Tyler. And then in the sales table, we have a couple of orders here with different sales amount and different customer IDs here. So here we have customer ID 1, 2, 5, and 6. So we don't have customers 3 and 4. And so if we were to produce an inner join here, we would only get the values 1, 2, and 1, because when we're joining on the customer ID and the inner join, the customer ID with 6 and 5 does not exist, so we will not take them in the query. So we will only display this row, and this row. But notice here in the results here and to the left, when we do a full outer join, and I've done this purposely here, so I've taken the customer ID and the customer name from the customer table, all of those fields from that table. And then the same field here, customer ID, is twice, but it's from the sales table this time. And so you can see a pattern here. So the first row here it says customer ID is null, the name is null, and the customer ID is 6, the order ID is this one here, and it's 150. And so since we did a full outer join, we're going to display this row even though we didn't find a match on customer ID equals to 6. So we simply say that we don't know who the customer is, but since we did a full outer join, we will still get that row, and we will display the customer ID and the name as null because we don't know the values since we didn't get a match. And then if we go down, we take this order here. Oh yeah, sorry, the same applies for this row, customer ID 5 with these values. For that order, we don't have a customer 5 or 6 here, so these 2 rows will still be, we will still get them in the query, but we don't know the customer ID and the name of these. And then we go down to to this row here, we said, okay, customer ID from the customer table is 1, and we have Robert, and then we get a match here because the customer ID is also 1 in this case for this order. And so here we will get everything because there's a match on the customer IDs in this case, and in this case. And so we see that whether we get a match or not, because here we don't get a match, here we don't get a match, but here we get matches. So it doesn't matter if we get a match or not, we still take all of the rows from table 1 and all of the rows for table 2. And where there is no match in both tables, we will have null values on those fields. So we say here we got null values because we took the value from the right table here, customer ID 6 and 5. So we took everything from here and we didn't find a match in the left table. So all of the fields from the left table will be null. But down here is the reverse, because here we have customer ID 3 and 4, James and Tyler, and now it's the reverse case. Even if we didn't get a match, we still take these 2 rows, but since we don't have a match on the right table, we will display null on all of the values. And so it's very important to understand the differences here, because if we were to do an inner join here, as we saw earlier, we would only get the matching rows from both tables, which in this case would have been this row with customer ID 1, since we have 1, customer ID 2, since we have 2, and then 1 again, since we have 1. And so in an inner join, we would only display 3 out of 5 rows, but with the full outer join, we get everything from table A and table B. And if we just take a quick look an example here, if you want to try this out, I've prepared a small query here, a script here with 2 tables, and you can create them for this lecture and then just drop the tables afterwards. But when we run this and we see here, I'm going to show you how to write the full outer join sort of live in a query editor. So let's say that we have here, we want to select star from table customer. And we also want to select everything from table sales. And so if we run both of these queries at the same time, we see that the customer IDs here, we have 1, 2, and 1. So these 3 rows exist here. But if we wanted to write a, let me just do like this. If we wanted to write a full outer join, we would say, okay, so we want to select the, actually, let me just prepare the join here. So we say we select everything from table sales. We'll give it an alias as S, or we can either write as S or simply just S. There is just the same thing, it's just 2 different ways of doing it. I have gotten used to not specifying the as here, so I'm just writing the alias like this. And then we write full outer join, and then table customer C. And the join condition is going to be the sales, the customer ID from table sales is going to be equal to the customer ID from the table customer. And so now, since we have the aliases here, we can select columns from both tables. So we can start off by saying we want the customers, the customer ID, and then the customer name. And then we want everything from the sales table. So we get the sales.customer ID, sales.OrderId, and sales.SalesAmount. And just to make it easier to follow along, I will do an order by 1. So I will order by the customer ID field from the customer, from table customer. And so now when we run this query, we see here that it's the same thing that I showed in the PowerPoint here. This was just to show an example of how you can write it live, but I'm going to explain this again so you guys really understand, because it's very important to understand the difference between a full outer join and an inner join. And so the rule here for a full outer join, I'm going to write a comment here, full outer join. The rule is get everything from table A and table, like this, table a AND table be whether there is a match or not. That is very important. And so what I mean by that is, once again, here, even though we didn't get a match on customer ID 5 and 6 and 5, we still get those rows. It's just going to display null. And the same thing occurs here. We're still going to take customer ID 3 and 4 from the customer table, even though we didn't find a match in the sales table. So all of these values are going to be null, but we're still going to take them in the query. And so I designed the query like this because you can see a pattern here that when you don't get a match on the left-hand side, everything is going to be null. And when you don't get a match on the right-hand side, all of the right values is going to be null, but you're still going to get the rows. So this is a good representation to sort of visually see that how the full outer joins work. And so in the next lecture, I'm going to briefly talk about the self join. So I will see you guys in the next lecture.